(1:15). This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here's the news edited and read by Ramesh Piris. First, the headlines. Sri Lanka and the IMF reach preliminary agreement on emergency loan. The Prime Minister assures PTA will not be used to arrest protesters. The CAA issues special gazette specifying directions for manufacturers and traders. The NBRO issues landslide warning level 1 to 4 districts as rains intensify. Minister of Power and Energy says fuel distribution lapses rectified. The SLBC independent group sit in the opposition. The university admissions to commence from Monday. An 18-hour water cut in Colombo and suburbs over the weekend. In news overseas, UN seeks $160 million to help Pakistan amid epochal monsoon floods. In sports, Asia Cup, Afghanistan beat Bangladesh and qualify for Super 4 stage. And now the local news in detail. Sri Lanka and the International Monetary Fund have reached a preliminary agreement on an emergency loan to crisis-hit Sri Lanka, and a formal announcement will be made on Thursday. The island nation, struggling with its worst economic crisis in more than 7 decades, had sought up to $3 billion from the IMF. Staff-level agreements are typical, subject to the approval of the IMF management and its executive board, after which the recipient nations get access to funds. A visiting IMF team held talks with Sri Lankan government officials, including the Treasury Secretary, late into the night on Tuesday to address concerns on the political front. Most of the technical details had been agreed to beforehand. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena assured Parliament today that the Prevention of Terrorism Act will not be used to arrest protesters. Instead, he said that existing laws will be used to maintain peace in the country. He said this in response to a question raised by opposition leader Sajid Premadasa over the police crackdown on a protest staged by university students the other yesterday. The Prime Minister said that those arrested yesterday have not been arrested under the PTA. The police also arrested at least 25 protesters. The Consumer Affairs Authority has issued conditions on the import, storing and marketing of 48 items. The chairman of the CAA, Shanta Nirayala, issued a gazette notice by virtue of the powers vested in him under the Section 10 of the Consumer Affairs Authority Act No. 9 of 2003. The conditions include ensuring the goods demanded by a consumer or any person be supplied within a reasonable period without delay. The Gazette notice also states that the maximum of manufacturing capacity should be maintained unless there is no sufficient raw material, labor or machinery in possession or control of the manufacturer, or where any other factor does not affect the manufacturing process. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing with more local news. As heavy rainfall prevails in many parts of the island, the National Building Research Organisation issued an early landslide warning level 1 to 4 districts: Kalutara, Kandy, Matale and Ratnapura. People living in these areas have been advised to be watchful for the possibility of landslides, slope failures, rockfalls and ground subsidence. Meanwhile, the Department of Meteorology, in an advisory issued this morning, cautioned of low-level atmospheric disturbance in the vicinity of Sri Lanka. The department said downpours above 150 millimeters can be expected at some places in the western, southern, Sabaragamuwa, central and Uva provinces today. People living in particularly landslide-prone areas and low-lying areas in river basins are requested to be vigilant in this regard. Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara, taking to his official Twitter handle, says lapses that prevailed in the fuel distribution process have been rectified and more stocks were dispatched during the last 4 days. Minister Wijesekara in his tweet further said that the Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals Limited will continue to distribute 4,000 metric tons of diesel and 3,000 metric tons of petrol daily. Accordingly, the fuel requirements of public transport buses and school transport vehicles have been fulfilled. He further added that a cargo of 35,000 metric tons of octane 92 petrol will be unloaded tonight. A group of 13 parliamentarians from Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna has decided to sit independently on opposition benches in the parliament. This was announced by the chairman of the SLBC MP Professor G.L. Piris during the parliamentary session this morning. Accordingly, MPs Professor G.L. Piris, Dadasala Peruma, Professor Channa Jayasumana, Professor Charita Herath, Dr. Nalaka Godaheva, Professor Gunapada Ratnasekara were among the 13 parliamentarians who moved to the opposition benches in the House. And that concludes local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Moving on to the main news story. University Grants Commission Chairman Professor Sampath Amaratunga said students who had got through the 2021-22 GCE Advanced Level Examination can apply for university entrance starting next Monday. Addressing the media, he said all preliminary activities relating to the enrollments have been completed for fresh university intake. Accordingly, Professor Amaratunga said the fresh applicants should obtain their students' handbooks and the relevant books will be distributed among the selected bookstores across the country by Friday. He said relevant paper advertisements notifying this will also be published in 3 languages in Sunday newspapers. And that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Watch Life is brought to you by
A Strength to Your Life. CIB Janajaya Vasana has commenced. Valuable gifts and all bills are on 31st of October. Come to CIB today.
In Watchlight, the National Water Supply and Drainage Board announced an 18-hour water cut will be in effect in Colombo and its suburbs from 8 a.m. Saturday, September 3rd till 2 a.m. on Sunday, September 4th. In a statement, the NWSDB said that Colombo, Dehiwala, Mount Lavinia, Sri Jawadanapura Kote, Kadwela municipality areas, Maragama, Burlaskamua, Kolonava municipality areas, Kotikawata, Muliriava, Ratmalana and Katubadda will be affected. And that came to you in Watchlight.
A Strength to Your Life. CIB Janajaya Vasana has commenced. Valuable gifts and all bills are on 31st of October. Come to CIB today.
Moving on to world news, first the headlines. UN seeks $160 million to help Pakistan amid epochal monsoon floods. Supporters of Iraq's Al-Sadr leave green zone after violence. NASA will try to launch moon rocket on Saturday. Now the world news in detail. The United Nations has appealed for $160 million to help Pakistan following epochal rains and flooding that have killed more than 1,100 people, affected 33 million others and destroyed homes, businesses, infrastructure and crops. Torrential rain has triggered flash floods that have crashed down from the northern mountains, wrecking buildings and bridges and washing away roads and crops. Colossal volumes of water are pouring into the Indus River, which flows down the middle of Pakistan from its northern peaks to southern plains, bringing flooding along its length. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said on Tuesday in a video message to launch the appeal in Istanbul and Geneva, Pakistan is awash in suffering. Iraqi supporters of powerful Shia leader Muqtada al-Sadr have withdrawn from Baghdad's high-security green zone after deadly violence overnight rocked the Iraqi capital. Tuesday's move came shortly after al-Sadr called on his supporters to retreat and demanded an end to fighting between rival Shiite forces and the army that left 30 dead and hundreds wounded. After his speech was broadcast live on television, his supporters started dismantling encampments and clearing the green zone, where municipal workers began clearing up shells and bullets casings left in the wake of the unrest. The US Space Agency says it will try to launch its new moon rocket on Saturday. An attempt at liftoff on Monday had to be scrubbed when one of its 4 engines on the vehicle would not cool down to its required operating temperature. After reviewing data, engineers believe they now understand why the issue occurred. They think it is likely to relate to an inaccurate sensor reading that they can develop a strategy to deal with the problem to launch day. Saturday's launch will be timed for 18:17 GMT at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Back to the headlines of the world news. UN seeks $160 million to help Pakistan amid epochal monsoon floods. Supporters of Iraq's al-Sadr leave green zone after violence. NASA will try to launch moon rocket on Saturday. And that concludes world news. Moving on to development news. President Ranil Wickremesinghe says that the outstanding loans obtained by small-scale paddy farmers from state-owned banks will be waived off, excluding interest. Accordingly, the outstanding loan amounting to 688 million rupees currently in default to the state-owned banks will be written off for a total of 28,259 farmers who own less than 2 hectares of cultivation land and are in repayment areas of cultivation loans given by the state-owned banks as of May 31st, 2022. The decision was reached taking into account the decrease in harvest, lack of fertilizers, agrochemicals and inputs, and abandonment of cultivation. And that was development news.
Sports news is brought to you by
Sampath Bank. We present your future.
Moving on to sports news. Afghanistan beat Bangladesh by 7 wickets and became the first team to qualify for the Super 4 round of the Asia Cup after winning a tense case against Bangladesh in Sharjah. The victory was set up by spinners Mujibur Rahman and Rashid Khan, who picked up 3 wickets each to reduce Bangladesh to 89 for 6 in the 16th over. Mossadegh Hussein's unbeaten 48 of 31 balls lifted them to 127 for 7, but it was still far from a competitive total. Afghanistan, though struggled in the chase, Najibullah Zadran changed the game with a flurry of sixes and his unbroken partnership of 69 of 5.3 overs with Ibrahim Sadran took Afghanistan home with 9 balls to spare. Meanwhile, India will play Hong Kong later today and Sri Lanka will take on Bangladesh tomorrow. And that was sports news.
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
In business news, Kingslake, Sri Lanka's leading manufacturing solution expert, is celebrating 15 years of time-honored partnership with the country's most trusted, oldest and largest furniture manufacturer, Don Carollis & Sons Private Limited. The collaboration was initiated in the year 2007 when Don Carollis sought to implement the InfoSit line ERP system with the purpose of simplifying and automating the company's complex manufacturing processes. Kingslake CEO Dilip Fernando commented that from the outset, the company's mission has been to enable local manufacturers to excel from product concept, design and manufacture to deliver. Since its founding in 1860, Don Carollis has crafted furniture with a singular, unwavering commitment, combining traditional and modern methods of craftsmanship. And that was Business News.
Business News, sponsored by
Cash through NSB globally and win wonderful gifts locally. Will you be the lucky winner of the NSB Golden Jubilee? 50 gold sovereigns for the top prize winner of the NSB Golden Jubilee. Scooters for the 10 second prize winners. iPhones for the 10 third prize winners. Mountain bikes for the 29 fourth prize winners. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Economic news, courtesy of...
I bought my daughter a laptop for her work by managing my finances. Whatever the expenses may be, I can't afford to miss out on life's special moments like her birthday or our anniversary. So you need to invest to make your family's future flourish.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibilities. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
In economic news, President Ranil Wickremesinghe says that the government has decided to allot 20% of shareholding in state-owned banks to the depositors and staff of those banks. The decision was taken with the intention of meeting the recapitalization requirement borne out due to the increase in interest rates, rising NPLs, loan settlement issues faced by businesses due to the economic crisis and liquidity issues faced by the state banks. And that was economic news.
LOLC Finance is taking the power of innovation to the next level, winning 5 golds at the Technovation Awards 2022, leading the digital revolution with cutting-edge interbanking digital payments. LOLC Finance claims the overall gold award, whilst also claiming an extraordinary victory in digital banking. LOLC Finance will continue to innovate with the next generation digitalization of financial services, delivering a superior customer experience.
And finally, moving on to the weather report. The Meteorological Department says there is a low-level atmospheric disturbance in the vicinity of Sri Lanka. Therefore, cloudy skies will prevail over the southern half of the island. Showers and thundershowers will occur at times over the most parts of the island. Severe showers above 150 millimeters may occur at some places in the western, southern, Sabaragamuwa, central and Uva provinces. Heavy showers about 100 millimeters can occur at some places elsewhere. General public is kindly requested to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by temporary localized strong winds and lightning during thunder showers. And that was the weather report. And to conclude this news broadcast, a recap of the main news headlines. Sri Lanka and the IMF reached preliminary agreement on emergency loan. The Prime Minister assures PTA will not be used to arrest protesters. The CAA issues special gazette specifying directions for manufacturers and traders. The NBRO issues landslide warning level 1 to 4 districts as rains intensify. Minister of Power and Energy says fuel distribution lapses rectified. The SLBC independent group sit in the opposition. The university admissions to commence from Monday. An 18-hour water cut in Colombo and suburbs over the weekend. And in news overseas, UN seeks $160 million to help Pakistan amid epochal monsoon floods. In sports, Asia Cup, Afghanistan beat Bangladesh and qualify for Super 4 stage. And with that, we conclude this news broadcast from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.